Welcome to another edition of All Octaves with me, Val Kleinhans, where we chat music, whether it's with the fans who love it or the musicians who make it. Today, a musician who makes it is here. If Casey Musgraves and Megan Trainor had a country soul love child, the result would be Calgary's own Mariya Stokes. Mariya, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Val. I'm excited to chat today.
I know. I'm so excited to learn a little bit more about the country world because I don't have too many country guests on here from time to time, but this is called All Octaves, and we do want to cover all the genres and all the octaves.
Totally. Well, and it was interesting. I was listening to all octaves, and it seems that you're a big metal fan, is kind of what I was gathering.
Wouldn't have guessed it by the Pantera shirt at all.
You know what?
Would not have guessed it.
I have tickets to see them and Metallica in Edmonton.
Oh,
Yeah, this summer, and I am so freaking excited. It's gonna be it'll be my first
jealous.
my first time seeing them. Yeah, it's gonna be wicked.
Oh, I cannot wait. Jealous. They're coming in Minneapolis, which is closer to me too. But I'm like, oh, I got so many other travel plans this year. I'm like, do I spend on the tickets or do I not spend on the tickets? I hate that conundrum.
I
It's
feel
every time.
there's too many good concerts to see for sure.
Honestly, so country music, what do you love about the genre? What's your favorite thing?
I think probably the songwriting is my favorite
Mm,
piece of it because they say it's three chords in the truth, and sometimes we add in more chords, and sometimes we embellish the truth a little bit. But I think it comes down to the great songs that come out of the genre and the co-writing that happens too.
yeah, I respect that. I mean, I used to do country radio a little while ago, and I got to learn a little more about Casey and Miranda and Maren Morris. And Maren Morris in particular, she is one of my favorite writers, particularly with the tree that she just put out not too long ago. Really related that to that one with the toxic situation, all
Big time.
that she wrote
Well,
about. Yeah.
she's one of the best singers in the biz too. On top of that, so that doesn't hurt either.
No, yeah, not at all. I love the elements of soul that I hear in your music too. So, what did you listen to growing up? Were you surrounded by all of that?
Yeah, I was surrounded by all of that, but it was primarily country music and actually country radio is kind of where I started. Like
Mhm.
the Chicks were huge in my house. Who else was huge in the house? We listened to a lot of Johnny Cash, kind of like all the staples and basics. I remember trying to sing along with This Kiss by Faith Hill to with my karaoke
Aw.
machine when I was really little. I love that song. Still one of my favorite songs. Still can barely
Mm.
sing the high notes, but I sure tried.
I tried too. I saw her and Tim on the Soul to Soul tour not too long ago. The one that was just a couple years ago, not like the original one in the 90s, but the one they did their like comeback. And I was like, oh, she is a performer. Girl can get it. Like more so than Tim. Like no shade to Tim, but I was like, Faith had actually performed. Tim just sings his songs, has a good time, and then I get off the stage. No, Faith is interacting with the crowd. She's engaging. I loved it.
It's funny actually in country music. I kind of see that across the board. There are a few exceptions, but like the women definitely put on like a show in country music, sometimes a lot more than the men.
Usually.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear just more about the Canadian country scene in general because I think Americans don't have the full picture. And what I mean is when we hear like country music and we hear country music from Canada, I think our knowledge is limited to Shania, Terry Clark, Lindsay L. So what else is out there? What are we missing?
You know, there's a really incredible emerging scene and also a lot of really great songwriters that come from Canada. One of the things that we have up here that I think people don't even maybe realize is a pretty big co-writing community is the word
Mm.
I was looking for. Yeah, there's a lot of really talented emerging and established talent, but the thing is so many people actually end up moving to the States and to Nashville to do that. And it's actually kind of wild how many Zoom rights and how many different like little pop-up organizations you can get involved in.
Oh.
Even for me, like I'm in Calgary, Alberta, and we have a thing called the Calgary Songsmiths. So when I was first starting to get involved in co-writing and doing music, I went to one of their meetings and they host like little kind of like workshops where they'll give you tips and set you up with different co-writers and yeah, I think the biggest thing is there's a huge writing community up here and a lot of artists that are working really hard to make it in country music, which is also a little hard up here because in the States the towns are so much closer together, but up here it's
Oh.
minimum like a couple hours to drive between major cities and it's also really cold sometimes, so the touring can be a little bit harder. But the folks that are doing it up here are really committed and they have to be in order to get where they're going.
Yeah, they have a long writing season. That's what we call it here in Minnesota. Like December to about now, March, almost March, essentially. That's writing season, writing and recording season. And then the rest of the year, they might do their festivals, they might be out touring, whatever. So I relate to the weather thing for sure.
For sure. Well, and there's also in country music in Canada, there is like a Canadiana thing that happens. Have you heard of like Core Blund or Tim Huss or like Mariel Buckley?
No, tell me about them.
They're a little bit almost I would say folkier than maybe commercial country, but they really capture some of the quintessential Canadian experience. Or like Stompin' Tom Connors. Have you heard of him?
No. I'm listening to all of it. I'm open.
There's some, yeah, for sure. Definitely check it out. It's just, it really talks about the Canadian experience. Like Stompin' Tom and Tim Huss really talk about like what it's like to live in like super blue collar Canada. And
Mm.
who else? Oh yeah, Core Blend has so many good songs about Western lifestyle up here as well, and all the ranchers and the agriculture. And yeah, that's a little different maybe in its own brand, and you can hear it in the melodies and the way the songs are produced as well. It's kind of its own thing.
Relate to that. Okay, kind of, because it's similar in the States. Mostly the Midwest and Western part of it is ag. It's all agriculture. And I came from the Rust Belt and the blue collar, like
Yep.
steel mills and industry, being from Pittsburgh originally. And I love hearing all of those types of stories. I'm curious as to why you chose, like, so you chose to stay in Calgary. You're doing country music in Calgary. Why not Nashville? Why stay in Calgary?
I traveled to Nashville to write and also to
Oh,
just
okay.
connect with friends and all that stuff as well. But we actually have a lot of infrastructure set up here for musicians, and especially in Calgary. Part of what I do outside of being an artist is uh, like the corporate scene, the cover scene is pretty big up here. And I don't know, most of the musicians that I know that are emerging or kind of on my level have another job, and so my other job is to kind of live in this corporate scene a little bit
Yeah.
and play for those folks. And a big part of it is that there are enough opportunities for someone who's an emerging musician to get the stage time, play some of these different events, still connect and write and do all these other things. But yeah, that and also it's just I want to break in my hometown first before we focus on other places.
I love that. And that's the way to do it. Just hit the ground running. Build the
Yeah.
community at home first. Get out into the community and win their trust, win their love. I think every local musician understands that there's a lot of work that goes into that and that it is important. It's worth it.
Big time. And the other thing is we are so much less limited by where we are, I think, than in the past with the internet and Zoom and being able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
connect on social media. And so I do love the States. I do love going to Nashville, but I also enjoy the fact that I'm able to pursue and figure out my own identity in my own space as well. That's another really big thing. It's so wicked to be surrounded by excellence in Nashville. And it's also really wicked to be surrounded by excellence up here too.
Yeah, best of both worlds. I know that your parents at one point owned a bar in
Yeah.
your hometown. So I was curious, like they had to at least be music fans, or maybe they were musically inclined as well. Did they teach you guitar and vocals? Were they involved in music at all?
Yeah, so my dad actually grew up as a drummer in a family band, and he started a
Oh,
cover like a bar band actually when they had the hotel. And part of what they did in my community is they started this jam once a week in the afternoons. And I was like 8 years old, and they would let me like sneak in and come sing with everybody. And that was kind of my first taste of really getting involved in the live music thing, which is a big part of my passion. And then on top of that, I would sit like on the stairs right outside the bar room when they would have different bands come through town. So one of them I mentioned actually was Tim Huss. And he played every little town and small town bar basically across the country. And actually he came to breakfast at my parents' house the next morning because they were like, yeah, our kid like wants to do this. And I remember him sitting me down and he had like, do you remember like the original EPKs, Val? Like how people used to like cut out newspaper articles and like put them in a book?
oh yeah, yeah. Those.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
CDs, cassettes, all of it. I had it. Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. So every time he would get a review in one of the towns he was playing, he would go grab the local newspaper and like cut it out and put it in this book so that he had info about where he played and different show reviews. And when I sat down with him, and I think I must have been about 12 at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is actually so much more. There's so much more to music than I ever thought. Because obviously, he's a great player, great singer, really, really great songwriter. But also, like, there was this whole business side that I had no idea about, and he took the time to kind of explain the basics to me. And yeah, so being in the bar, growing up in a bar, I guess you could say, and being around musicians that were touring and doing the thing and traveling that took the time to talk to me as an emerging artist had a
Mhm.
huge influence on how I think I do things today.
Got it. So maybe by proxy or just happenstance, Tim sort of becomes a mentor in a way, as in he's maybe your first exposure into this is what taking music seriously, for lack of a better term, looks like.
Absolutely. When we got to co-headline a show in Banff, Alberta last year for the Banff Riders Association, and that was such a cool full circle moment. And it was funny because some of my team was there and they were like, "We've heard this story like 4 times from you and Tim because you're so excited to share it with everybody." Because it was such a cool moment to be able to share the stage with him so many years later.
Oh, I love that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that your highest charting single on Canadian radio has the word Christmas in it, but it ain't got nothing to do with Christmas, the holiday, at all. And there's a line in it that says, I'm going to stop a white wedding that should have been mine. Now, tell me about that because I was like, how did we go from a Christmas song to he will never hurt me like this ever again? I will get him.
That song was so wild. And also because it was funny. So it's got the word Christmas in the title. It's called Christmas, Arizona. It's actually referring to a ghost town in Arizona is where that comes from. But because it had Christmas in the title, and also I think because we released it in November, when the radio folks heard it, and it's kind of campy and fun, the production on it. When they heard it, I don't think anybody really listened too closely to the lyrics. There were a few exceptions to that. But yeah, it ended up getting on Canadian holiday radio, which was wild and doing pretty well there. I think it's my only single that's charted that high. Never had success on Canadian country radio, which is totally fine. But yeah, the holiday folks love it. And it's I think one of my favorite songs to perform live. Because it is kind of goofy, and I just tell people to request it around the holidays again.
Just make it happen again. No, no shame
I'm not
whatsoever.
complaining about any play that I get ever. So yeah, that one was pretty goofy and ended up doing well for a reason that was not intended. But I guess that's just having a career in art. Sometimes stuff moves or pops off and has an impact in a way that you don't intend. But grateful for everybody who added it either way, and really hope they add it again next year.
Because it's entirely subjective and
Totally,
there's a blessing and a curse to that and a lot
100%.
of times, but I love to see that. Where does a line that says I'm going to stop a white wedding that should have been mine, where does that come from? Because that's powerful.
That song was so strange. It was interesting. I started writing that one and the story just popped into my head. And it was early on when I was starting to write. And I remember bringing it to a co-write. And I think I had a verse and a chorus done. I
Mhm.
brought it to a co-write with another songwriter here in Alberta. Her name's Tanya Ryan. And I played it for her. And she said to me, I can't touch this. Like this song already knows what it wants to be. Like it's done. Go trust yourself and finish the song. And I was like, that one was a solo write, and if she hadn't have said that to me and told me to trust myself, I don't know if it would have been. And
Mm.
no, that song, I don't even know if I can take credit for it. It was one of those ones that was like a little zap and just knew what it wanted to be, probably because it's an alter ego or a side to my personality or something that just feels safe to come out in music. But I don't know. That story knew what it wanted to be, and I almost feel like a vessel for it. Because yeah, maybe I'm just a little wild and I don't even know it.
Multiple sides. That's the beauty part of being human. I'm totally
Yeah.
here for all of it. So, what are you listening to now, just for fun, on your own time?
I listen to a lot of Lake Street Dive. They're one of my favorite bands right now. They have a new record that just came out and they have a song called Hypotheticals on it that's produced so I don't know. It's so musically complicated but simple at the same time, and it's almost like jazzy, so I'm really digging that. There's another artist, she's a country artist actually from Nashville. Her name is Nikki Morgan, and she has a song called Love Save Me that I love so much, and have actually been covering at my live shows because it's one of the coolest, most impactful songs that I've heard in a really long time. those are kind of the big ones right at this moment.
I love that. So Nikki's song in particular, what does that mean to you? What made you decide to cover it? What was the
Uh,
impact?
well, I was down in Nashville actually, and I got invited by a friend. Her name's Holly G, and she started an organization called Black Opry. So basically, she was sick and tired of Black country artists not being recognized by the genre, and started this really, really, really incredible community and has done so much. And so she invited me to the Black Opry House when I was down there writing, and I heard Nikki sing "Love Save Me" live, and it literally, like, I have full body goosebumps just thinking about it right now.
Mm.
And it like made me full on cry. And so after that, I looked it up on Spotify and just kept streaming it and then decided to cover it myself because it's just not very often that you hear a song that hits you like that. I think it hit me because A, she performed it beautifully, and B, it was so honest that it's almost and
Mhm.
direct that it's like almost painful to listen to, but in a good way. Anyway, I just related to the lyrics big time, and it felt like something that I wished I had written. So usually when I
Yeah.
cover, that's why.
Every musician has that one song. Like I'm not one, but I've interviewed enough of them to know that every musician has that one song in their catalog that they wish they wrote themselves. And sometimes they cover it, sometimes they won't touch it for that reason. Like,
Well, and I'm hoping next time it was funny, I was messaging with her on Instagram. Well, I was commenting and just fangirling all her stuff, but I'm hoping next time I go down south, she'll be open to writing with me because I'd really like to see what else she has that's unreleased and just like see what we can collaborate on together.
yeah, and good on you for learning just all aspects of the country scene as well. I mean, not that you had like too much to learn, you had a good foundation to begin with, but what I mean is, I was not aware of the lack of diversity within the genre until I paid closer attention to it. And I
Yeah.
was like, I never, it's one of those things where, like, until I was involved in country radio for a couple of years, I was like, wait a second. I don't remember who it was, but one person pointed it out. And then I started to reflect and I was like, it's true. Mickey Guyton is like the only one that I could name at the time.
Well, and the thing is that's the interesting part is there's not a lack of diversity, I don't think, in country music. There's a lack of support system
Yes.
for diversity. So if you're willing to like do some digging, there are so many incredible country artists from all walks of life. But if you just scratch the surface, that's not always apparent. Even in country radio, I think that less then I think women get less than 11 or 10% than all radio spins. And then if you look at queer folks or people of the global majority, it's like less than, especially women, it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes me feel for people like Morgan Wade, for example. I mean, there's a lot of talent with her as well. And she's
that's
another one that does not get the kudos that I feel she deserves for multiple reasons. Just
yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's slowly changing and conversations like this are super important and all of us just yeah, being aware and doing that extra little bit of digging to find artists that make us feel stuff.
yeah. Do you feel, I mean, we're having these conversations now. I think there's a beginning toward that recognition that's happening right now. What else do you think, or do you see maybe within the scene that makes you feel like, okay, there is direction toward positive change here? We are changing that.
I got into a program called Top of the Country this year with SiriusXM, and it's in
Mhm.
partnership with the Canadian Country Music Association. So I'm a top 8 finalist. And one of the finalists, his name is Robert Adam. He's one of my best buddies. He's openly gay and is also a top 8 semifinalist. And I don't think there's anybody who's actually been openly out who has had an acknowledgement like that. I'm
Yeah.
also queer, and so that's pretty cool, but I also pass, so there's that. Yeah, I think that's a really big piece of it. Jade Turner's in it. She totally deserves it. She's an indigenous artist, also from Canada. And so I think there are these big programs that are starting to acknowledge some of these artists. Yeah, and in past years too. But I think that in itself is just such a huge step forward.
Yeah. I'd be curious to compare the Canadian version with that, with the American version of that. because I feel like now we're only starting to have these conversations, at least here in the States. Literally at this moment, like Beyonce is sort of kicking the door down now because she
Yeah.
just put out Texas Hold'em in 16 carriages. And I love it. I think she's the perfect person. She's the perfect catalyst for these conversations. And I do want to see more from her. I
Big
want to
time.
see where this goes. I hope it expands to the Mickey Guytons or the Morgan Wades or the people like that that don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah, and the thing is like they have fans. So like within the fan bases and country music fans, there is that recognition. It's just the yeah, sometimes the industry stuff takes a minute to catch up.
Yeah, the mainstream part of it. That's exactly it.
That's it. For sure.
That's exactly it. And it's like, man, you're sleeping. Wake up. We've already been here. We're already ready for this.
Totally.
Let us have it.
Yeah, there's already people that are 12 out of 10 invested. So just yeah, just acknowledge the work that's already being done.
Period. You've been doing some work too. You just put out a new single. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's called You Want Me. It's the first off of an album that I've been working on for a little while. I was hiding, yeah, in my little studio cave, making some tunes, and so this is kind of the intro to what the album's going to be about. It was written by Devin Cooper and Robin Delento, and it's kind of a goofy one because I usually directly am like in the room when the songs that I record come to life. But this one was a little different, actually. Devin showed me the demo of this song like years and years ago, and the melody of the chorus got stuck in my head. Like I just couldn't stop thinking about it. But it was funny because the original lyric, it was written for him, and the story just didn't totally resonate with me. And so when I was figuring out what to record for this record, that song kept popping up in my head, and I talked to my production team about it, and then approached Devin and Robin and asked if I could rewrite it and tell my story with it and just mess with the lyrics a little bit. And they were super gracious and said yes, and let me rewrite a little bit of the lyric. The melodies are still fully intact from their original demo, but yeah, it's just a song that got stuck in my head that I was a fan of before I even recorded it, and then they were gracious enough to let me make it my own.
There you go. I can't wait to hear more. I mean, got a new album on the way. We just heard that. What else can we look forward to? What can we get excited about?
We're gonna be dropping a single like every 2 months-ish for the next year.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the album's gonna come out at the either the end of this year or early next year. It just depends on what happens with some of the songs. But it's interesting because it's rooted in country, and I live in country, especially as a songwriter and especially as a vocalist because I can't get the country out of my voice. But production wise, we actually let each song tell us what it wanted. And so some of them are really obviously country, some of them live a little bit more in pop, some of them are a little jazzier, and that's I guess what people what you can look forward to is not knowing what's going to come next because every song is completely different.
We're gonna get all of it. We're gonna get all sides. That's something that I wanted to ask about too, because we're talking country vocals. I mean, you said I can't get the country out of my voice. The stereotype is that there's a twang. I
There
mean,
is a
you think there's a twang? Okay, because I'm like, do we really want to do that label? But you feel like there is. Is that what the country voice is? Is that twang?
So for me, it was funny. I got hired to ghost vocal a European pop project called Hearts on the Run. And
Oh,
yeah, so it was really interesting recording the vocals for it because I sent the first cut to one of the producers. And he was like, "Hey, it's good, but we need to talk about the way that you are specifically singing your vowels." So for
yeah,
me, there's always a dip, which is such a, you hear that and you're like, yeah, great. I'll think about how I'm enunciating my vowels. Anyway,
yeah.
uh, and basically there's like a diphthong. So I don't know exactly how to explain it, but basically there's a twist on a lot of the vowels. And pop singers, they want it super clear and super straight. And so I had to pull all of my natural instincts out almost in order to sing this as straight as the producer wanted. And I did it, but it was a bit of a challenge to figure out that other style of singing that's so different than what I normally do. So before I would say like, well, I don't know if there's an accent, but now working on both sides, I would say there's definitely an accent.
But challenges like that and the fun moments like that, is that what keeps you heavy in music? Is that what keeps you going?
Yeah, there's I don't know, there's always so much more to learn. There's always so much more to explore musically, and that really excites me because I know what I want to say and who I am, but sometimes the way that I say that, or working with different producers or different artists or different co-writers pulls stuff out of me that I would never have guessed, or challenges me to think in ways that I haven't before, like the pop versus country vocals. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's always more learning to do and always more to explore, and that gets me excited for sure.
That's exciting for the fans. That's got to be exciting for the musicians as well, as you're saying. I can't wait for it all. Mariah, thank you so much for spending time with me. Thank you for all the good things that are coming. We can't wait for it all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on all octaves, Val. I had a blast chatting with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course.